In this video, I pretty much included every other LINQ extension method, and we're going to feature the methods that can help you do things like determine whether there are any items in the sequence at all, at least any items that meet a certain criteria. We'll look at other methods that perform basic operations on the sequence, like the sum of all the values, the min, the max, the average, and so on. Methods that find the first item or the last occurrence of an item in the sequence, or the first or last item that meets the criteria that you set off in the sequence. Okay, so we're going to cover a lot, but honestly, there's no single method here that honestly needs much in the way of a detailed explanation, not like the previous video, that's for sure. I'm betting that you've seen these sorts of operations before, and it's going to be a fairly easy to digest video. The trick is just remembering that these things actually exist, remembering them when you actually need them, so that you don't go off and build this yourself, writing a bunch of code to do the exact same thing that this already does. All right, so anyway, you can see I've started with a real simple example here of just numbers, and these numbers are just in a random sequence. There's no order to them, there's no thought process to them, and what we're going to do is just use this as a simple basis. We could use objects instead, but you'll see in some cases this will work just fine for what we're trying to accomplish. And here we're looking at extension methods, so there's real no need for the full query syntax. We're just going to use the method syntax instead. Okay, so the first example here, let's paste one in, is to determine whether there are any items in the sequence. Is there anything in numbers? We'll test and determine that there are. It returns a true. Okay, cool. Let's mix it up a little bit. Okay, does the entire sequence meet this requirement? So what we're asking here is, do all these numbers, are they at least greater than the number of 11, true or false? True. Okay, what if I were to change this up to, I don't know, like 30? Ah, false. Why? Because there's at least 2 items that are under 30, so that makes the all false. Now you might be thinking to yourself, why are you doing this? Why would you ever need this? Believe me, there are times when this is going to be necessary when working with SQL data or with objects to determine if there are any that meet a certain criteria before you move on to perform more verbose or more complicated analysis on that data. Okay. All right, so let's go with another example here. Does the sequence have at least one item meeting that requirement? True or false? All right, do we have at least one item in our array that contains the number that is the number 68? And that is true. What if we were to change this to 30? Rerun the application, and that would obviously be false. Okay. All right, this is an easy one. In fact, here, yeah, let's do this. Tell me how many items are in the sequence. There are 8 items, 8 numbers listed here in our array. Tell me, what is the sum? If you were to add them all up, what do we get? 401. Cool. What's the smallest number? 12. Cool. What's the largest number? 80. Okay, great. Tell me, what's the average of all those numbers? 50.125. Awesome. Can't you see that would be useful? Tell me, what is the first item in the sequence? The number 46. Yep, that's the first one. How about the last? Number 68. It is the last in the sequence. Okay, let's move on. A little more complicated. Okay, return the first item in the sequence that satisfies this condition, or return the default, which, because this is an integer, a default would be 0. Alright, so return the first item that's greater than 100, or return me the default, which in the case of an integer is going to be 0. Let's see what we get. 0. Okay, what if we were to put this at 60? What's the first item in the sequence that's greater than 60? Number 79. Oh, right there. Okay. And just for the record, I use that first or default all the time. Similarly, give me the last item in the sequence, or give me the default value. Give me the last item in the sequence that satisfies this condition, or give me the default value, which for an integer would be 0. All right. Give me the last item that meets that criteria. 68. Yep. All right. Okay, you're looking for just one item in the sequence that satisfies the condition? This is going to return that number, or it's going to raise an exception. So give me a single item. I'm expecting just one item in this sequence that satisfies that condition. So let's run that first. So there's only one item that's greater than 79. Okay, what if we were to put this at 49? What happens? Okay, we get an invalid operation exception. The sequence contains more than one matching element. All right, so if we're expecting one item and we get back more than one item, then it's going to return an exception. Okay, great. What if we don't want the exception? What if we just want it to zero out? Well, let's go ahead and run this first. First of all, we get a 0 because there is nothing greater than 80 in our collection, so it returns the default for an integer, which would be 0. And let's go 49 here and see what we get back from there. Now, it still errors out in this condition because there are more than one items in the collection, so it's going to error out. Okay. We're expecting 1 or none, but we got 2 or 3. Okay. All right. Now this one doesn't sound like a very exciting example, but it actually allows you to do two things. This is an aggregate, as you can see here, and it's going to first of all perform a sum. It's going to aggregate the data together. It's going to seed the sum. So in this case, we're going to seed it at 0. And then it's going to perform some evaluation expressed as a lambda before performing the sum. So again, this example, the seed is 0. And then it's going to compare each number to find the largest number in the sequence. Okay? So let's see what we get. 80. Okay, what if we started with the number 10 and ran it? Okay, we still get 80. Now it's not doing anything in this case because we're not adding the numbers together. So let's use the aggregate the way that it was intended to. Now, let's start here and run it. We get an aggregation of 401 because we summed up all the values by adding them all together. Here, we're going to get 411 because I seeded it with the number 10. Okay? Okay. And there are probably even more that I'm leaving out here, but that's a pretty good overview. Believe it or not, when you're working with SQL Server and linked entities, some of these become extremely handy. I use these often when working with values. These work great, if you're trying to determine, mathematically a sequence of numbers and their values and their max and mins and all that good stuff. But I definitely use the first or default or last or default often. I use single a lot, and maybe you'll see some of that when we're working with data as well. Okay, but at any rate, wow, day 9 was huge. I hope you're still with me. Honestly, the meat of this day's content was really everything from the introducing LINQ to objects and forward after that. Everything before that you can probably just consider background information. So the exercise for today that's coming up in the next video, it's going to focus on using LINQ, not all that other stuff. So don't be intimidated. LINQ is really fun and really easy, even though I've showed you some more complex examples. Hopefully that early portion of the day helped you and turned on that little light bulb that we have hanging above all of our heads. But I want to say, if you made it this far, great work. You made it to this point. That says a lot about you. Congratulations. I honestly think at this point you've been exposed to the most difficult part of the entire learning curve of learning.net. Everything else is just a variation on these ideas. Well, maybe not everything, but a lot of it. And the fact that you got this far in your thought process, I think that says that you're able to comprehend what's coming up next. It's not going to be this hard at all. Okay, so you made it through day 9. Make sure you do the exercise. We'll see you there in that next video. Thank you.